There we go. Okie dokie. All right. Well, hi, Catherine. Thank you for joining. So I know Catherine because she is my aerobics instructor. Uh, just thought I'd put that out in the beginning. A well-rounded human being she is. So I know her through my aerobics that I do every Wednesday, but also because the world of sustainability in Bristol is quite small. I do come across Catherine all the time at events, networking events, talks and things. So yeah, I'm looking forward to hear more about what she does and a bit about her kind of career path to this date. So I guess we'll start off just by asking you, Catherine, to explain a bit about what you do and who you are.
Yep, no problem. So yeah, alongside the aerobics, and I was saying to my boyfriend actually before coming on today, I hope I don't feel the need to like go into a load of jacks and stuff because you're here, Megan. I might get confused about what evening it is. But yeah, so really I teach the aerobics to have like a nice little bit of physical difference in my career. It's just for fun. My main job is I work 4 days a week for the Future Economy Network. I'm director of that network, which is one arm of the Future Economy Group. And what the network does is that we put on different environmental events every week via Zoom at the moment via Zoom. It used to be for sort of physical events. And that's for businesses to get an understanding of how they can do better, basically. So our events can be literally about anything, as long as it relates to the environment and as long as it's useful for a business audience, then we'll put it on. So we've done stuff on sustainable food, sustainable buildings, how, you know, behaviour change and how you can sort of change your staff's behaviour. So many different things. It's absolutely brilliant if you're interested in that anyway. I just feel like I've got the perfect job because I would pay to go to our events and I get to go to them for free and, you know, to influence sort of the topics that we speak about as well. So and I guess it's just worth me mentioning as well, if any of you were ever interested in coming to our events, they are heavily discounted for students, so if you wanted to come along it's £2.50. So there's my little plug done.
Thank you. And did you always think that you would get into the kind of world of sustainability, or was that a fairly new thing for you?
So it's new for me. It's always been an interest, but more an interest on the side of my career. I for years I worked in homelessness. I worked for Shelter. I don't know if you sort of heard of Shelter, the housing charity. And I was sort of like sort of worked my way up and was at sort of team leader level, managing sort of small projects within Shelter. And then in 2015, Shelter was running out of money for the types of projects that we were doing, and so I got made redundant along with my team. And I used that redundancy money basically to go back to university and do a master's in sustainable development. So that was then my first time to really think about sustainability as a career. And do you know what? I thought I knew quite a lot about environmental issues. And then when I went to university, it was so life-changing. I can't even express, you know, I thought I knew a lot, and then all of a sudden it felt like, and I'm sure you guys, you know, you're already in it, but
no, well, actually our students are not in university yet, Catherine. I'll just so that you guys are at the stage before university, so it's useful to know about your experience without uni. Actually,
I mean, you've already got that mindset around sustainability and stuff, and I sort of thought I had, but all of a sudden it felt like it was all encompassing, and everything I bought, everything everything felt like it had an impact, and that was huge for me. And I don't know if you feel that as well, but it was a complete shift. And so I was learning all this stuff about climate change, and this is so back in 2015, so 5 years ago, and, you know, feeling a little bit like, oh my goodness, this is completely overwhelming. What can I do? So I decided to volunteer for a local community energy group, Bedminster Energy Group. I'm sure you've heard me talk about that before, Megan. And sort of got in touch with them via the website, heard nothing, got in touch again, nothing. And so there's an umbrella organisation called Bristol Energy Network who sort of help support all the community energy groups. So I got in touch with them and I said, oh, I haven't heard anything, I really want to volunteer with them. Anyway, to cut a long story short, it turned out that all the people who were volunteering for Bedminster Energy Group had moved out of the area or had children and other commitments. And I, in effect, was Bedminster Energy Group. So I was like one volunteer in the group, and then sort of had to think about how we were going to sort of revitalise things, really. And so I got £2,000 grant funding sort of awarded through sort of a local fund, and we put on weekly, I think it was, quite ambitious, we put on weekly events in our local community centre on different topics related to sustainability. And at each of those events, and I do a little shout out, a little plea at the start really to say, you know, come join me, come support this. And we grew from one to, we had at its best about 20 active volunteers. That's dropped off a bit lately because of COVID and we're not able to do quite so much. But so it was all about bringing the community together and them understanding, you know, how serious climate change is and what they might be able to do to have an impact. And then I guess the embarrassing thing is I put myself forward for an award at the university, the Sustainability Student of the Award, for my work that I've been doing volunteering at Bedminster Energy Group. Sorry, this is long-winded, but you'll understand why I'm explaining it all. And I was told that I was a finalist for the Sustainability Student of the Year award. Went to they had like an award ceremony, sort of dinner, like posh dinner thing, and we went to that at the university, and I won the award. And the sponsor of the award is the director of the Future Economy Group, and he said to me, so you're busy studying now, but when you've finished, let's talk about what you might be able to do with future economy. And he took me for a fish and chips after I'd finished my studies. And I started out as the events manager, and then what happened? Oh yeah, and then the manager of sort of the director then sort of told me in my first week that he was leaving, and I got quite quickly bumped up to director. So it was just like a weird sort of like a lucky coincidence really for me. But I guess that with him leaving and me getting bumped up, but the lesson that I learned from it is that you just got to just put yourself forwards, you know, and it's embarrassing, right, to nominate yourself for an award. Really embarrassing.
But if you hadn't done it, then you wouldn't have met that guy and you wouldn't have gone for fish and chips. And
yeah, exactly. Yeah. You never know where it's going to take you. So and sort of combined with that is, you know, just making sure that you're out there and going to the right, sort of just showing your enthusiasm, I suppose. So volunteering, or going to sort of specific events that are put on around whatever it is that you're interested in, is so useful, because you're just demonstrating in what is, I guess, quite a competitive area, isn't it? Sustainability now.
Yeah, it's hot stuff now.
Particularly in Bristol, I think it's so important to just sort of stand out above the others, and showing that enthusiasm's key.
And you guys have all done that by joining Bright Green Future, step number 1. That's really cool. So yeah, I mean, definitely volunteering straight out of your masters was the best way for you at the time. Were you ever worried? I'm just curious as well. Were you ever, because a lot of, I guess, volunteering when you've come out of uni is the kind of fear that you're not getting paid for that work, and I guess that's a barrier to people volunteering. Was it ever a barrier to you, or did you just kind of like, well, this is an investment for me just by putting my time towards this?
Yeah, I mean, it helps to have the passion in whatever you're volunteering for, so I didn't mind putting the hours in. I knew that it was something I cared about, but also ultimately I was also thinking, you know, I need to be making these networks anyway. By putting on those events at the community centre, I was meeting so many sort of fairly high level speakers on the subjects that I was interested in, you know, so it was just useful for me in that respect as well. But I had to work alongside the masters, so it's a challenge, you know, to be able to sort of juggle all of that. But you know, it's really important, isn't it? I think to stand out, just to show that you have that little bit more drive maybe than some others.
Yeah, definitely. Cool. Well, thank you for that. That's really interesting. I want to go back now in time, if that's okay, and ask you to think back to your 15-year-old self. Like, what were you doing? What were you doing? A levels, GCSEs, or oh no, I don't know what they were called. Yeah. And were you doing environmental topics at that point? And you know, what were you thinking at that age? Because you know, going to our Bright Green Futures are kind of roughly around 15, 16. It's interesting to think, you know, where you saw yourself going at that stage.
You know what, I feel like I've fallen into my different career paths, really. I never really, at the age of 15, I didn't really know where I was going to end up. All I knew was what I enjoyed doing study-wise. I enjoyed languages, I enjoyed sort of art and design and geography. There's the link maybe, sustainability. And that's what, so I went on to do A-levels and chose French, Spanish, geography because they were the subjects that I was good at, not particularly because I knew where that was going to take me. I was pretty clueless. My sister, on the other hand, knew from she was about 5 and she knew she wanted to be a teacher, but I could never really sort of fathom where I was going to go with my career. Same when I went to university. So I went to Swansea University, did geography and French. It was what I enjoyed. And that was great because I spent a year in France, with, obviously because of the sort of joint French degree. And I realised that French was not for me because I was so shy back then. I didn't hardly speak to anybody in French. I had barely any French friends. I just hung around with all of the sort of foreign students like me, you know, because I was so shy. It's hard for you to believe that now, I expect, isn't it, Megan?
I was just thinking that. What? You teach a class of people. I don't doubt that you're shy. It's hard with a different language, though. It's very different.
Yeah. And then it was coming towards the end of my French geography degree, and I still didn't know what I wanted to do. I went to a few career things at the university, and one of the career events that they were putting on was to join what's called the JET program, which is the Japan Exchange Teaching Program, I think it stands for. So basically they send you to Japan and you teach English in schools. So I went and did that for a couple of years, and still didn't really know what I wanted to do. I knew at that point that I didn't want to teach because I found it quite full on for me. Standing up and sort of performing in front of a classroom of people was sort of quite exhausting, sort of emotionally, I found it anyway. And but what I did realise whilst I was out there was that a lot of my sort of English speaking friends out there would just happen to sort of find me when they had problems, or you know, if they needed a bit of a listening ear, they would come to me. So that's made me start to think, okay, maybe I need to go into some sort of career where people need to talk to you about their problems or any concerns. And I was sort of thinking along those lines, and that's how I ended up going into housing and homelessness, because most people who are homeless or have housing issues have additional problems and sort of needs. So that sort of took me down that route for a decade or so. And it was during that time that I started to become more educated in terms of sort of climate change, and started to be a bit more of a sort of bit more activist, I guess, and sort of yeah. So there's for me, in terms of my career to date, it's all been about people and just helping people, I guess. One of my concerns about going into sustainability was I didn't know much about the different career paths, and I was worried that it might be a bit too techie for me, and I'm not techie at all. But I am good at communicating with people. And what I think it's so important that we have good communicators in the whole climate change debate, because you need to bring everybody with you. You know, you need everybody to get it, and you can sort of spout as much techie stuff at people as you want, but it's not going to get into sort of the hearts and minds. It just doesn't. But if you can really persuade people that, you know, you care about this because you care about the human race, and you can't bear the thought of other people suffering because of our actions, then you know, that might bring people along. I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe it works differently for different people. You know, maybe for some people the techie stuff does work, but it doesn't work for me.
Yeah. And that's it. Like, you know, when you're thinking about where you want to go, that whole thing about finding your, you know, you realize that you were good at talking to people and helping people, and that's, you know, what they would consider a soft skill, which I hate that term personally. But you know, those skills that you realize in moments of your life are so important to decide what you're going to do. It's not just a matter of having that kind of content knowledge, but having the ability to talk to people, and that's really useful to kind of recognize those kind of abilities in yourself.
I think it's so hard to like look at yourself in that way and recognize like where your skills are. And it's interesting that with my team at Future Economy Network, we recently did personality tests, because we were supposed to be having a team away day, but obviously we couldn't go away. So I had to sort of change what we were going to be doing, and I thought, okay, well, let's get to know the team better and do sort of team building type stuff, because we can do that via Zoom. Anyway, we did these personality tests, and sure enough, like my personality test is all about being sort of extroverted and very sensing and feeling and sort of very human focused. And I wish I'd done that personality test like 20 years ago, because you know, it's really hard to sort of know yourself and sort of be objective, I think, about who you are and what suits you. You know, I think we're all really good at being negative about ourselves and what we're not so good at. But it's quite hard to sort of figure out what you're really good at. So I guess like that would be, if you guys can do what's it called, the Myers-Briggs test, and I can send you the link if you want it. We found a free one online. I think you have to pay for some of them, but we managed to find a freebie. Then you know, that might just help sort of have a think about things in a slightly different way.
Yeah, definitely. It is a hard thing to do. It's something that joining various programs like the Catalyze Change program I've done so many times, but I still want to do more of. You just have to kind of sit there and like look inwardly and that's a difficult thing to do. But yeah, those tools can be really useful. We did that as well at CSC in our team. But I don't know if we did anything with the results. Turns out I'm a really structured person, which is an interesting realization.
Yeah. I mean, we've taken them to our supervision meetings and we've talked them through, and it's helped me to think about, okay, what would be an appropriate task to delegate to this person? Would they enjoy going to this networking thing on my behalf? Probably not, because they're introverted or whatever it is, you know. So it is helpful. It's helpful in terms of me offloading some of my tasks on people, but you know,
it's
try and do a little bit of sort of discussion as well about what is that useful to them. You know, they're not going to be with Future Economy Network forever. They want to maybe go on to future roles elsewhere. Does that help them think about that, or you know, working their way up within Future Economy Network to other roles, you know? So yeah, it's quite good.
Oh, such a good director, Katherine. Do you if you can send us the link, that would be really cool.
Yeah,
then
no
people can
worries.
do that. And I guess, yeah, I would ask if you kind of thinking back to those key moments that you've had that have allowed you to come to be where you are now, were there any kind of key talks that you heard or key books that you've read where you're like, right, that's it, sustained? I mean, you obviously had a bit of an environmental mind before because you did geography, but kind of going from that, was there any key, I don't
Yeah.
know, literature or TV shows or anything that you watch where you're like, right, that's the path for me?
So my dad was a huge influence for me. He's an engineer by trade, and had I'm Cornish from Cornwall, and we lived in a tiny village, and on the outskirts of that village was a geothermal mining plant. I don't know if that's what you call it, but basically he worked there, looking at how you could bring heat out of the earth and use that as a renewable heat source. So from an early age, I was sort of thinking differently about energy, and he designed a loads of different machines, sort of a machine, for example, that went into the ground. I think it was called something like the Badger, and it would send out a spark, and that spark would help to map all the fissures in the rocks, so that then they would know they could put water through, and that water would heat up. And these like holes were enormous. And so and then he retired, and sort of later found out that those machines that he'd been designing for renewable reasons were being used for fracking, which was hugely upsetting for him. And since then, he's been this crazy eco warrior. I'm so proud of him. Like, he is at all the XR demonstrations. He does so many things around sort of just trying to raise awareness. He writes articles for the local newspapers, done tree planting, you know. So he was a massive influence for me. So in that respect, I was really lucky because I had a parent who was very supportive, you know, of the direction that I was going in, and really wanted me to put right maybe the wrongs that unfortunately happened with his career. Yeah, and so he was a massive influence. Nikki Jones, Megan, you might know Nikki. She is an amazing speaker around sort of energy and climate change, and now a good friend of mine. But she really helped me when I was sort of setting up Bedminster Energy Group. She delivered a series of 7 talks all about climate change and what you can do. And actually, at the moment, she's doing some talks online, so you might want to sort of look her up. And she is incredibly, she's got this amazing brain that contains all this information about sort of the severity of climate change, the climate emergency, but also she's really good at thinking about sort of practically what you can do, so you don't feel completely like, I don't know, sort of overwhelmed by how serious it all is. So she was a massive influence. Obviously Attenborough, no doubt. I mean, he's such an amazing person, isn't he? And in more recent years, XR and everything that they've done has been, you know, just to know that there are so many people out there who care that much gives me the energy to keep on going and doing what we do at the Future Economy Network. And then in terms of books, E.F. Schumacher, Small is Beautiful, was one of the first books that I ever read that linked sort of my geography backgrounds to sustainability. And that's a really nice read, actually, and just gets you to think about how we don't have to keep on growing, you know, to be a healthy society. You know, it doesn't have to always be about economic growth. And being quite short, I quite like the title that Small is Beautiful as well. And then I don't know if any of you are interested in sort of waste and resources, but there's a really good book, Cradle to Cradle. It's called Cradle to Cradle, Remaking the Way We Make Things. A bit of a mouthful, but that's a really good sort of book around sort of how there is no such thing as rubbish. You can't throw things away, you know, it's all in, it has to all be in a cycle, and it's just, you know, where does that stuff end up? Can we reuse it? So that's really good. Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, maybe if you can send us that, then that can be a little wee Katherine Piper reading list. Thank you. So there's a couple more things that I thought would be cool to chat about, and really is I want to give people the kind of sense of what you do in your day-to-day job with Future Economy Network, and you know, what does the world of events management mean within the context of sustainability, because you know, I do know that there are some BGFs that are keen to look into events management as a route, so it would be useful to hear about what that's like, and you know, what kind of skills you need in order to go towards that.
Okay, cool. So my week will usually consist of an event of some sort, and it's usually an early morning event.
Oh yeah, Future Economy Network has like 7:30 morning, like 8 a.m. morning event.
Oh, so it's hard going. I've got a spot of tonsillitis actually at the moment, because I chaired 3 business breakfast events last week. Then it's not usually that full on, and I didn't have enough early nights, and by the end of it I was like, oh, I can't speak. Yeah, so there'll usually be one event, if not 2, maybe 2 events per week on different subjects around sustainability, and I'm really lucky. I've got an amazing events manager in Davina, and we basically have a monthly catch-up, Davina and I, where we look through all of the feedback forms from previous events, where we ask people how they found the event, any constructive criticism, any ideas for topics in the future. And out of that, then we sort of try and think about sort of really interesting topics, and I guess quite relevant for what you're hearing in the news at the moment, around sort of Black Lives Matters and what have you. We always try to think about having a diverse range of speakers. So, you know, putting it out to the companies that we know are doing good stuff on whatever the topic is, and then specifically asking for them to consider sort of diversity with whichever speaker that they bring forwards. And I think we're getting there in terms of sort of having gender representation at our events, but we're not there in terms of sort of disabilities, young people, interestingly. So that might be something for us to think about, and race. So we've got a long way to go. So we're doing a lot of work on that behind the scenes. What else do I do during the day? Oh, so a lot. So it's a business network. So businesses that join the network pay £180 for the year, and for that, one of the benefits is that they get to meet with either myself or a member of the team, and we find out from them where they are on their sustainability journey, and what we find out, you know, what is it they want from the network really. Do they want to be showcasing their electric charge points, for example, if they manufacture electric charge points, or do they want to be introduced to somebody who knows how to do carbon footprinting? You know, so it's just getting to understand where they are and why they join the network. It's usually an hour's meeting, and from that I have a whole list of introductions to others in the network that will help that business to progress its sustainability journey. So it's really lovely, you know, because we've got this wide network of businesses who are doing good stuff, and all I always say to our members, it's like I feel like sort of a Tinder dating service, but for sustainability, you know, where I'm just sort of linking people together, and I hope that then they go on and do some good stuff. We don't always hear that, you know, but sometimes you get, you know, feedback back, oh, because of that this happened, and it's brilliant, it's amazing. So very often there'll be a welcome meeting at some point during the week, if not 2 or 3 welcome meetings or review meetings with our members. And then just sort of operational planning stuff, like we're looking at our cyber security at the moment because we've gone online. Is it up to scratch, you know, and we don't want to be at risk of sort of any issues around that. So some, like, for me, quite boring stuff, although some people love that. And then also I sit on the sustainability board within Bristol City Council's sort of One City plan. So so basically my role within that is sort of to try and be a mouthpiece to all of those members of our network to make sure that businesses are well represented on the sustainability board. So Bristol's made a commitment to be carbon neutral by 2030, and how do we help businesses to ensure that that happens, you know? So that's I don't know, it's hard to say a typical day, isn't it? But that's the sort of things that I'll be doing.
Yeah, that's good. I can never explain what my job is, so that was great. And do you, I mean, out of interest, do you see, because obviously all of your events are going online now, and I don't know, maybe you'll be like, do you know how long that'll be for? And do you think that there'll be more kind of job openings in the future for online event management and stuff, seeing the way that we're going? I'm quite interested in that.
Yeah, I can see it going that way. I mean, we found it really useful to go online, and it's been something that we've been talking about for years, and this has given us the push to do it, because we're reaching people much further afield now, and we can get speakers from further afield, you know. So we've had speakers and attendees from Scotland, and we've had people coming from Switzerland and Norway, and it's amazing because some of those countries are doing a lot further ahead than us, and to learn from them, that's great, you know. But you lose something with online events. You have, I don't know, it feels like it's a little bit harder to, well, from a business perspective for us, it's harder for us to sell our services.
Yeah.
Because we don't feel like, because what happens with our events basically is that we do formal presentations, maybe we'll have 3 speakers, and then everybody just networks, and we do that by splitting people off into smaller breakout rooms. And whereas once I would have been trying to chat to people on a one-on-one basis and saying, have you considered joining the network? It's only £180. When you've got 4 others in the room and there's only 1 speaker at any one time, that feels inappropriate, you know. So we're missing, business-wise, it's quite challenging for us. And we've reduced our prices because we understand that everybody's struggling with COVID, and we want people to still come to our events. So we've reduced our prices, but we're not getting the opportunity to sell, which is a challenge. So yeah, there's pros and cons. I think it's, we're going to keep doing virtual events even when we come out of lockdown. We will still have the virtual event space alongside the physical events.
Yeah,
we think that's probably the best. So we'll use Zoom or something similar as our platform, and those who are presenting physically will be presenting to Zoom in effect, so that they are, you know, those who are virtually logged on can also benefit. Because now we've had members who have joined from Scotland and stuff, we can't stop doing it.
I know.
Fun, wouldn't it? So, but the people who, what we foresee happening is that those who book on virtually just won't get the full benefit. They won't get the food and the drinks that we usually put on, and they won't get the sort of networking, because we probably can't facilitate that and also be physically present networking. So there'll just be reduced rates for our events that are virtual, and then sort of slightly more pricey for that.
You used to do those green walking events, right? Or like the net walking. Yeah, that's it. Networking and a walk at the same time.
Yeah, we hope that to come back sort of a bit sooner, maybe.
So you can socially distant walk.
Yeah, I mean, what we've done at the moment is we've put all our events online for June and July, and we're just keeping on reviewing as time goes by. But yeah, networking will probably be the first thing to come back.
Yay! Cool. Okay. I think we can probably wrap up the chatting bit. I do want to ask just a couple more questions. One of them is when you say business, I think business can mean like a lot of things, and can you give a bit of an idea of what kind of businesses sign up to the network? And are there any surprising businesses that sign up to the network?
It's interesting, really. We allow any business to sign up to the network, which can be controversial. But we feel like everybody needs to be on board in terms of this. You know, let's say if an airport wants to join the network, and obviously that isn't very sustainable at the moment. Well, they are the ones who need to be in the room and hearing how serious this is and actually thinking about their impacts, you know. So we allow anybody to join. Types of businesses that join are obviously environmental businesses, so people wanting to market and showcase what it is that they're doing environmentally. So there's a lot of sort of environmental consultants, or oh, I don't know, like people selling, you know, we've got, for example, Interface, who are members, and they take fishing nets, fishermen's fishing nets out of the ocean and turn them into carpet. So, you know, it really, and it can be like, Interface is global. We have big global sort of hotel chains, law firms, accountancy firms. So not ones that you would particularly guess would be part of an environmental network. The one, and then sort of right the way down to your sole trader who's just genuinely interested. And although like our events are for a business audience, anyone can attend, and we've got like I said, we've got the reduced rates for students as well. So you know, if there's an interest there, we want to encourage people to come and learn more, you know. Yeah, so it's, I mean, I can send you the link to our business directory to give you a flavour, but it's quite hard to summarise it because it can be,
it's so varied, isn't it? I've actually used it, and I would recommend, if you're interested, because, you know, I'm still young in my career path and I like to look at what's out there, and I think it's useful to know that there are businesses that aren't traditionally environmental that are, you know, willing to go on that journey. And it's, the network is useful to realize that they're out there. And, you know, if you want to research into any potential employers in the future or people to ask work experience from, then using the network is pretty good start. So I'd recommend you guys check it out, because
you know, the Centre for Sustainable Energy are members of the network as well. And if you ever wanted introductions, you know, because CSE are members, we would happily introduce any of the people on your programme to our members, you know.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, I can get in on it early. Amazing, thank you. And I guess my last question before we go into Q&A is, if you had any advice to your 15-year-old self, what would it be?
Like, don't worry that you don't know what you want to do. I think you find your way, you know. You do, you just find your way, you figure out what it is that suits you and your personality, and go with your passion. The career path that I chose, I was never going to earn a lot of money. That didn't matter to me, you know. Working in housing and homelessness, I was passionate about it, and that's so much more important, I think.
Yeah, definitely.